All right, everybody. Welcome to DenSecure Webcast, DenSecure Cast, number 6, I think. Yeah, 6.
5, 6.
It's 5. No, it's not. 5 was
No,
last week.
With Ali, I'm messing with you.
Oh, thanks. So today we're going to talk about. I don't know if I'd want to call it a controversial paper. I mean, I think a lot of people in general would call, everything that's going on with AI, a lot of it, controversial, potentially FUD. For those that don't know, that's fear, uncertainty, and doubt. I think there's a lot of doubters, naysayers about, what kind of things this new technology can do, what it can't do, what it can be used for, what it should be used for, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think, spoiler alert, my broad takeaway is no matter what you like or don't like about it, it's here. So act accordingly. But basically, what it is, it's this paper that came out, Cloud Security Alliance, called the AI Vulnerability Storm, Building a Mythos-Ready Security Program. And as much as I hate the fact they said Mythos in there, I think the intent is to basically say, insert next-gen scary model here, and they're using Mythos as kind of the placeholder for that. So I get it from that perspective. It's written by some pretty big hitters in the industry. Rob Lee, Chief of Research at SANS, Chief Officer, Gaudio Veron, the CEO of Gnostic, CISO and residents for Cloud Security Alliance, and Rich Mogul. A lot of contributing authors, including the more heavy hitters, so Bruce Schneier, Jenny Easterly, Rob Joyce, Katie Mazuris, lots of big names in there, and a ton of reviewers, like peer reviewers, right? Ed Scotus, et al. They're all in there. And so I personally take what is in here. I don't want to say like as gospel, because we are still very early on in all of this and the AI of it all. But to have people like this come out with a paper like this, no matter what you think about it, I think should be weighted pretty heavily in your consideration, whether you're an attacker, a defender, somewhere in between. So with that, I mean, Alex, what do you, just like overall broad thoughts about what is in here and how you feel about it?
So at least for the name, I'm probably going to refer to it as Mythos or Mythos. I don't know which one.
Say it again.
Mythos or Mythos. I don't know how people like tomato kind of thing. Whatever it is. I mean, we talked about AI in the past DenSecure Cast and how we're attempting to utilize it. We talked about AI a little bit in the past casts.
Oh, yeah.
For how we're trying to adapt with it and what we think the industry is going to shift towards in terms of doing it. I mean, you're right about Mythos. We have very limited visibility of what it's done. There's some talks about projects like open source projects where there's a bunch of issues and people are theorizing that is probably Mythos, essentially collecting and making those issues. I think vulnerability noise is going to get even higher than it already is. That's my takeaway, that there's going to be so many vulnerabilities, and actually adding proper context is going to be more important than ever. Because if we didn't have enough noise from vulnerability scanning, which is probably another controversial area in terms of where I don't think there's been a lot of innovation in terms of how those scanning solutions and how we identify vulnerabilities. If that wasn't already overburdening a bunch of teams, this is only going to add even more noise. And how do you actually apply context? How do you apply your methodology of actually what to prioritize in your environment is going to matter. And at least the key takeaway that I have from reading that paper, nothing is ultimately new in terms of recommendations, right? Like in terms of the past 15, 20 years of when we're performing the same types of recommendations of what we call the basics, which
it's all the same.
Basics, and depending how you define them, sounds easy, but definitely going to be difficult in long-term strategic initiatives. But it's not really any different.
Basics, then take each one and add AI add speed via AI.
Yeah, acceleration. I mean, that's kind of the theme that we're in right now, and probably in our industry, but everywhere, right? Like if you look at it from across every sector and kind of what's going on. It's just acceleration and speed right now. And at first, when Mythos was coming up or being released for not general use, but at least in terms of how they've rolled it out, it seemed a mix of marketing hype and also the realism in terms of what it can do. I mean, even without Mythos, if you look at actual offensive security researchers, local or even a smaller tier models and not the frontier models, they're also effective. So I knew that there was going to be some realism, and I think there's still some marketing hype and a little bit too much noise with Mythos. But at some point, we live in, like you said, I'm going to take that paper as pretty seriously and look at the recommendations, which again are the basics in my opinion.
Well, even if you take it, if you take the paper and you remove any mention of AI, it's still a valid paper in the sense that it's like you should be doing these things anyway. So, like, I mean, we should probably take a step back and say, for those who don't know, and if you're listening to this and don't live under a rock, you probably know. But I don't know, within the last couple of months, they came out with Anthropic came out with Mythos, however you want to say it, and basically it was like, you know, a small nuclear bomb went off within the community, and everybody's like, "Oh my god!" And I mean, based on I guess their either press release or whatever their statement was, with Project Glasswing, right, which is, you know, there's this new model we have. It's terrifying. It's finding all the bugs. It's going to cause all the problems. It's leaps and bounds ahead of Opus, which they're the Frontier model now, 4.7. Well, it depends who you ask how Frontier it is, I guess. You know, and we're only going to release it to a trusted subset, I think, of around 40 organizations. So like your Microsofts, your Amazons, you know, kind of quote unquote critical cloud infrastructure type of vendors, and other organizations. I think like CrowdStrike was in there and some of the EDR vendors, maybe. I can't recall all of them. But the general takeaway is that this thing is legit, that it is going to accelerate all of this, like you said. You know, limited release to those organizations, but this thing is gonna, I don't see how it doesn't get released sooner or later. And I think even in this paper, they say that this is coming and it's going to be a problem within the next 6 to 12 months. I think it's what they said, 6 to 12. So like,
I mean, you look at what OpenAI, they're taking a different approach, right? Too, and they're probably going to have a more generally widely accessible model, I guess, to compete with Mythos. So regardless of the models, I mean, we've been using, like you and I know we've been using tokens and burning tokens. My hot take a little bit, I don't know if you agree with this or not, but the perspective that I have as I've used more and more of these models is it doesn't make script kiddies or people that don't know how to do vulnerability identification or actually know what they're doing. Like if I took someone off the street and said, here's Mythos, go hack this company, I have a hard time believing that they would have much success. Maybe the terminal will flash and they'd see cool things, but they really wouldn't interpret or understand what's going on at all.
It lowers the bar to entry writ large, though.
Yeah, but I think the advantage in terms of where people have success with it is you already have experience of using these models.
Yes.
Right? Like you already, not the only models, but you know the work. Like you're intimate with the work, you understand what's going on. And that is an accelerating factor of if you already know what you're doing, then that's going to give you the bleeding edge in terms of actually being able to utilize these models effectively versus if you aren't experienced and the barrier to entry may be lower, you're still not going to really have, you can't just say, hey, make no mistakes, hack this organization and get a shell, right? Like that's not probably what's going to happen either.
So, I mean, I agree with you, but I also say, I was also thinking literally just now, when you take this from like the truly bad guys perspective, right? They don't care at all about understanding how to, what's what I'm looking for here? Like from like a offensive security, like above board ethical pen tester, red team or whatever's perspective, like not only do you have to like know how to use this, but you have to, like you said, understand like what is business risk, what matters. You know, if I'm finding all these things, like which of them are noise, which of them are important, how do I explain what they are to the stakeholders that have hired us to do this thing? How do I interpret the results that come out of it? right? So I don't go down weird rabbit holes because the thing started hallucinating, right? Like maybe somebody without experience doesn't realize that it's off on some crazy path that it shouldn't be on. I feel like take all of that except for just find me a way to smash and grab this thing so I can steal stuff is what a real bad guy cares about. Take all of the other stuff away and they're just using it to like find me the easiest way in here, right? Find me, I don't know, like I found this old web portal, right, that this organization has, seems vulnerable. Go do something to it. See if you can get me whatever I want, right? I don't care about explaining it. I don't care about quote unquote business risk. I don't care about whatever, right? So like I do think the barrier to entry and like, you know, getting to that point is going to be lower, right? But like on the, from our perspective, right, you're right. Like this is an augmentation tool. It is not a replacement tool, at least not yet, and hopefully never. You're always still going to need the, you know, quote unquote human in the loop. I know that it was funny when I did the panel. Ed Scotus hates that term, apparently. It's like human involved. I don't remember what he called it.
Yeah.
You know, but it needs to be a function of the tester, not replace the tester, because of what you just said and what we were just talking about. But like more, I guess broadly speaking, it's interesting, you know, how they say this is going to change things, right? So these tools, and we have one, is already, you know, finding things, you know, way faster on client engagements than we typically would, which is, you know, obviously better for budget reasons, better for hours reasons, right? Better to prove impact, more impact with clients faster, because theoretically, if it's finding things faster, it can find more things within a certain time period if they're there. And it's also finding things, you know, that SQL injection thing we found the other day, or that it found the other day. I think we both agreed that within a time allotted for a penetration test, we probably would have found the issue. There's no way we probably would have crafted and manipulated the POC to weaponize it, right?
Yeah.
Because there were WAF bypasses that it figured out on its own and all this stuff, right? So broadly speaking, it's already happening, but like what they're talking about is it's going to be amplified, like create like, you know, orders of magnitude, right? Bad guys get it. There's all kinds of CVEs coming out. Defenders can't patch, can't manage vulnerabilities, right? Asset management, all this stuff. They're not going to be able to keep up, essentially. And so the recommendations, I think, are probably the most important part of this whole paper. And I think, you know, one of the interesting things they talk about is like basically everybody across an org, up and down, has to move quicker, right? So for instance, and I was looking today, I have asked around, I've asked online, like they're basically saying like you need to start using like AI powered vulnerability discovery, remediation, asset management, all these capabilities like across your org, and start now so that you're ready when this wave comes and this new dynamic takes place. But I can't find a reputable vendor that seems to be addressing this right now that you can go pay. I found Aikido Security, right? I don't know anything about them, but I've read some good things. Others, no idea, right? So the thing about it is you tell people this, it's like, well, where do I go to do that, right? If you Google search AI powered vulnerability management, every single product that exists is going to pop up because they all have stupid marketing terminology saying AI powered insert feature here, right? So it's really hard unless you do a product demo, and even in the demo, you're probably going to have to spend $50,000 to find out the thing's actually trash and doesn't really use AI at all, right? So it's like, how do you do that? You know what I mean? I mean, that's an open-ended question, but it's like, what do you expect these smaller, especially smaller, medium-sized businesses?
So my opinion would be enterprises right now are having a challenge where they're getting push. It's kind of like a push down approach where executive leadership is forcing and driving the adoption of AI anywhere, right? Like that's kind of what's happening across every sector. Unfortunately, what ultimately happens for most enterprises is they go with Copilot or some in terms of actually usable agent or something they can actually leverage. And if you look across the industry of how others are actually using either frontier models or like other spaces, they're burning through tokens really fast and spending a lot of money without really getting too much money. In fact, other people are burning so much tokens that they want to look as if they are doing something to executive leadership from metrics perspective of, hey, look how many tokens I'm burning without maybe actually doing anything of value. So I think that's part of it, a little bit of where tooling is probably not there yet in terms of, you know, what's actually valuable. I mentioned earlier, right? So vulnerability identification and scanning has not been really innovated in the past 10 years, right? Like we're still just running a Nessus, a Rapid7 Qualiscan.
I want to interrupt you real quick on that. So, and you were the one that came up with this idea, which I was kind of surprised. Well, not surprised about, but created the automated external pen testing tool here, right? It took me all of 2 weeks, probably all in hours wise. And it's finding more than Nessus is.
Yeah.
Right. Why are we keeping Nessus? I think is the question that we've been asking ourselves lately. Like, what is, so to your point, like what's different?
Scan, I guess.
I mean,
that's all it's doing, right? Like there's no plugin. So if there's no plugin, it's not going to find the same vulnerabilities compared to what a model will be able to do of actually leveraging the same sort of offensive tools that we have access to, right? If they're open source or even private, you're not going to be able to make a plugin by yourself within Tenable.
I mean, that's the thing. And like, I mean, I guess Nuclei is the same idea, right? It's not AI powered. It has templates, right? If there's no template, it's not going to find it. If there's no plugin, Nessus is not going to find it, to be fair, I guess, Nessus. But, and I understand the difference between like a penetration testing platform and a vulnerability scanning platform are supposed to be two different things. But it's coming back with a lot of the similar things that a vulnerability scanner would come back with as well, right? There's a lot of informational stuff that we'll report on that we might not necessarily like make a full-blown finding in and of itself, but it's stuff that Nessus would find and report on, right? So it's like, okay, I mean, I guess for compliance, you know, like I guess we keep paying for Nessus for companies that have to have a external vulnerability scan, right? Whatever that's supposed to mean these days. So who knows? But yeah, I don't know. I mean, as far like, I don't know if it's worth the license to keep it around.
Yeah, I mean, if I was one of those project leads or if it was up to my decision, I would start crafting proof of exploitation, like aiding the vulnerability identification with the actual samples of, hey, this is how we would actually abuse it. Here's a safe, quote unquote, safe way to do it. Of there's different.
You're saying if you're a project manager for one of these,
like a Tenable, like Rapid7, those vulnerability scanning solutions of, hey, here's actually where you should prioritize because, you know, we use this model in the background. We took cycles to identify, and here's actual proof of exploit. Because right now, I mean, you look at the sheets of the risk ratings, and Tenable has tried with VPR ratings, and Rapid7 probably has their own custom ratings that they kind of derive beyond just the CVSS.
Well, they probably use CVSS and this and that and whatever.
There's some calculations and how they derive and say, hey, there's a public exploit that's going to be one to prioritize more than the other. Right. But then if you come to a client environment, like they don't have the expertise to know that this is important. Like if you're talking to someone who isn't even technical, they're looking at a TLS internal certificate issue that's not signed and going, hey, this is a critical high issue, and going to IT team and saying, you know, you have 30 days to fix this. This is your policy. You have 30 days to fix this. And that's junk. Like there's not actionable things that you could do with that. And to me, I mean, when we're doing a penetration test, and that's a key difference of find impact, like what is the exploit? Like what did you actually do with it? There could be theories of vulnerabilities and best practices. So if I find a router that's exposed to the internet with an admin page, I maybe couldn't get in, but I'm going to report on that. And that's valuable. You know, that's a best practice in the sense of why is it even exposed? Why is the service accessible to the entire world? But that's like the missing context of where those scanning solutions, in my opinion, have just been failing the industry and doing a disservice because people have gotten so much noise in the past couple of years and are wasting their time and resources to keep up with it, versus this new Mythos kind of debate and what's happening with LLMs and models. They're providing proof of exploitation. They're providing scripts and POCs. Are they all legitimate and probably have different chains and are probably overlapping to some extent? Yes, but at some point they're only going to get better. And there has to be something that comes out in the future that, at least accommodates to what I'm talking about of what is the actual risk and impact, and do I have the business context to understand why I'm prioritizing remediation here?
I mean, it's interesting in here. I mean, like the key takeaways that they have, recommendations, right? Like, one of the things I heavily agree with, I don't think anything. Well, I mean, yeah, I guess it could bite you, but is getting like, these tools in the hands of if you're big enough to have an in-house security team, right? In-house IT, you're not vendorizing that function, which we can probably get into as well, because that's a whole other set of questions that org should probably be asking. But like, get those in their hands ASAP so that they can get familiar with them and start learning how to like match, right? Like attack, like offense for some reason always outpaces defense, right? It's always, I guess by nature reactionary. But I mean, to be honest, like, I don't know a lot of clients we have that are even close to ready for any of this.
Yeah, I mean, you brought this up in a different cast, I think, but is the difference between when we come into a client environment or when we're proposing and saying, hey, we want to do a pen test, which to us is a manual hands-on effort. Yes, we'll use AI to some extent to operationalize and make our capabilities more efficient, but it's not as if we're automating the full exploitation and everything. We don't just have an agent running and saying, here's your report kind of thing, do a scan. The problem is, like most of the industry right now, if you tell someone you're going to do a pen test, oh no, like you can't scan us right now, like this is not a good time, do it off hours, we're really concerned about bandwidth. And that's kind of where like the historical, like we were burned in the past by X organization or we used this tool. It took down this switch, a branch went offline for a couple hours, and now we're so paranoid and so scared.
Our check printer is going nuts, printing out emojis.
Which is valid. I mean, it's not, it happened, right? Like that's something that could have happened, but that paranoia is going to only.
Don't ask me how I know that happens.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Everyone's probably done it here and there. Hey, we've done a mistake of every pen tester, junior pen tester has probably locked out some accounts. Like it's going to happen. But that paranoia and fear of not adapting is probably going to have some pain to some organizations that aren't willing to go through the effort of, hey, let's actually take this seriously. How do we actually gamify this and make this a legitimate model that we can actually work with?
Yeah, I mean, what you said about like, okay, like, it's never a good time to do a pen test, is it? Right? Yeah. Like you never want to have that, or like you never want to have to do these things. But like that's brings back to one of the other statements they make in this paper is like you need to basically develop or build towards a VulNops capability, like DevOps, but VulNops, where you're constantly dealing with the stuff, right? Like it's not like a periodic review. It's not like, oh, we do it monthly, right? It's all the time, which can lead and will lead to another issue of burnout, right? Because, and specifically, they're talking about burnout and incident response in this thing, right? So like you're going from, oh, we have an incident, however so often, we're dealing with it. We deal with them as they come in, whatever. Now they're telling you need to be ready for. Are you ready when you're doing your IR tabletop exercises or whatever? Are you ready for multiple incidents happening at the same time in the same week, right? Like, just think about the burnout that you lead to. Like, especially if your team is not very big, right? And a lot of places either outsource this or they're not big enough to have in-house incident response soup to nuts, right? Like that capability. So if there's, let's say they got a couple, 3 people or whatever the team is that deals with that, I'm willing to bet they have other jobs. It's not just that at small or at these clients. And now all of a sudden you're going to multiply because this is coming and you haven't properly You haven't provided them with the tooling and the what they need to respond to AI machine speed of finding the issues. Like what that would drive me insane, right? That I mean, I can't even imagine the pressure of that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's what I was talking about with noise. Like, how do you actually prioritize the right things? And just to be clear, the recommendation I would make for kind of jumping in and allowing things to happen and kind of working through issues, it doesn't mean that there isn't responsibility there. Like, you have to have chaos with some sort of responsibility. Like, you don't want a junior team member or someone that doesn't know how a tool actually works and run it and say, oh, oops, we just locked out all your domain admin accounts. Have fun trying to deal with this incident. Now I need even more work. There has to be some sort of experience and understanding, like, the responsibility that you have as a practitioner or someone internally to utilize those tools. But there's a safe way to do it, even in production, right? Like, that has to be done in live environments and working through those issues dynamically. But yeah, there's going to be more noise. There's going to be more tickets. There's going to be whatever happens in the background for to actually manage, I guess, that cost in the background.
Right. I'm trying to think. There was something else. Yeah, I like that they have like they don't leave the reader with like doom and gloom, right? Like they have, for instance, there are 10 questions to understand your security program state and influence, right? It's like, what's our stance today? Is it allowed? Is it tolerated? Is it restricted? Whatever. I'm willing to bet if we asked our clients their stance, it would be restricted, which I think it should be across your broad user base, right? But like the people that could benefit from this, right? Like again, your security team, right? Your IT team should be allowed within reason, and I think it should be, a message. The message from the top should be like, use these things to like rules to accelerate your capability, right? Like it shouldn't be this is coming for your job, right? Like there shouldn't be that fear. Like augment your day to day with these tools, right? And you're not going to do that with Copilot. You're going to do that with like OpenAI or Anthropic tooling, right? Like those are the things that people will need. So I mean, again, I'm willing to bet most of our orgs, not only is it restricted, but it's Copilot only.
That's
right.
That's what I think too.
I
mean, you probably brought this up in the panel, but it was I think you did. It was about a discussion about there's like a research paper that happened where if you had a bad negative experience with AI, then you were less likely to use it like 3-6 months afterwards, right? Like if you had that one experience of like using,
use them for like 6 months.
Yeah. And I totally believe that. I mean, if you come into this thinking that
it happened to me
the last time, I mean, I've same thing. I mean, 2 or 3 years ago, you told me, hey, we need to use ChatGPT or GPT's out and like, let's see what we could do to automate it. I was like, this is terrible. Like I could barely write an email with this. Like I'm just wasting time prompting it, but not getting really anything of value out. But these frontier models and the models are only getting better. And if you're only just evaluating Copilot, which to me is the easiest path because you probably already have Microsoft 365, there's already compliance controls. You already trust Microsoft with your data to some extent. If you already are hosting in SharePoint and OneDrive, there's probably kind of a natural decision on why those enterprises lean towards there. But it is in no way the proper solution for what we're talking about at all, right? Like there's probably some things that you could do, cool things with agents and Copilot, and you kind of leverage those models, but it's very different compared to using an actual frontier model that you're going to have experience with.
Oh yeah. I mean, I don't even like Copilot to me is not even in the same category.
Yeah.
Right? To me, it's like, it's an AI powered Clippy. And then you've got, the other companies we're talking about where like the real sausage is made, the real power comes in. Another thing interesting in here is like priority actions. And they openly say this is an aggressive timetable. And when I was at a small community bankers association yesterday in the middle of the country, I asked the question, how many people, some of this stuff is like, do it this week do it within the next 30 days, do this within the next 90 days, right? And I'm like, that's like for a lot of places a ridiculously impossible timeline right now. Like, I think that the goal should be, take that as a starting point and then adjust, but you still need to do it quickly, right? So things like, some of their top actions, right? Point agents at your code and pipelines. Now, some of our clients are going to actually have that in-house, but then this is where I go to the vendor side, where it's like most of these clients don't have any in-house development and everything is third-party vendors, right? So it's like, how do you ensure your vendors are doing the right thing? And then you get into like supply chain attack risk, like, and so like, your vendors have vendors, right? And so I think it's such a can of worms, and it's really hard to do. But I mean, what are your thoughts on like how you manage your vendors when it comes? Hey, what are you doing? How are you using AI in the product that I am paying for, good, bad, or otherwise, right? From a internal security perspective, like, are you just letting this thing loose to do like whatever it wants? How is it guardrailed? But also, like, what are you using? How are you supercharging the product with AI so that we're getting better value and security out of it?
Yeah. I mean, we talked about this in the past DenSecure Cast about third-party, fourth-party risks and related to SOC reporting and where the value, I guess, comes from at. I don't think it's a vendor questionnaire of adding another question to another 150 questions that you may be asking already to prospects or kind of vendors that you're looking to engage with. But I think at least without trust, I mean, that's kind of like the only thing you can have. But without at least going into specifics of what else can be done and just kind of relying on trust, it becomes pretty evident if a company is actually using AI properly or if they're just baking it in half-baked because they say they can. Like, if all they're doing is saying, hey, we just released an MCP, like, because we want to use AI, and there's no functional reason for why there's an MCP server now. There's an API that's documented. Nothing is actually operationalized. There's no efficiencies. We're just adding an MCP server just to say we have AI-powered solutions now. I think those are kind of revealing in itself of like, you're not actually using AI to that extent of how it's being done. Probably asking intimate questions of, how are you actually leveraging yourself? Are you using frontier models? What's your process for developing code? Some of that's going to be a black box, and how much either the vendors want to disclose and how much comes out from it. Maybe there'll be another kind of framework that kind of supports those initiatives. But yeah, it's everything we talked about in the past cast, that these are third-party, fourth-party risks. And if you can't control that, make a tabletop scenario. What happens if something goes wrong? Like, if your vendor gets hacked, what do they have access to? Are we
they make a big point in this of segmentation, which again has been around for far longer than we've been doing this job. It's like, you should segment. I mean, I can count on maybe one hand how many clients we have that properly segment their networks. I think, I mean, so yeah, quote unquote blast radius, that term. If a vendor is compromised, or or a package of some kind is compromised, and it worms its way into the software that you use and gets pushed into your organization, how far can it go, right? Not easy things to do.
I mean, the most recent example is you may have heard of it, for the Canvas breach that happened to a bunch of academia universities, right? Like, people are taking final exams and then they go up to the professor and say, hey, I can't access the final exam anymore. And what are we going to do, kind of thing? Those are kind of the stories that come up. That's a perfect example of third party, fourth party risk. Like, if that goes down, what are you doing? You have a huge dependency for managing your entire classroom, having data hosted there, doing a final exam and grading everything, and it goes down. What's your plan? Do you have pen and paper? Like, how do you actually operationalize it? Like, make a game table or tabletop scenario of that scenario exactly. And what do we do if that happens? Can we get up and running quickly, and especially at the time of a urgent final exam, to ensure we can still operate the business or education, whatever we're doing in the background?
Right. Cool. I'm trying to think. Anything else we want to talk about in this thing? Any points that you wanted to make, broadly speaking, about it?
I guess the final closing thoughts that I have is that, and we talked about it initially here, is that, yes, exploitation and vulnerabilities are going to increase, but that's really just the start of an incident. Just because there's an exploit like on an edge appliance or a web app or something to that effect, it doesn't mean that it's totally game over, right? Like that's, I think a lot of the industry thought right now where, oh, if you have this vulnerable exploit, it's over. Like we're done, right? All our data is gone. But there's still more to an attack that involves weaponizing an exploit, utilizing successfully past your control somehow, exfiltration, generating implant. Those types of things are still valid, right? Like, and that's where you can put your controls and layer defenses. And that's, I think, what the paper's alluding towards of it's not just game over just because there's more vulnerabilities, exploitation. That those things are being accelerated at a pace that we haven't seen in the past couple of years. But we've gone through eras in cybersecurity where there's been Metasploit. Like that came out. That was a huge, wow, oh my God, we have a ability to run all these public exploits and get shells. Like, what are we going to do kind of thing? We're kind of reliving that to some extent. And it's still true that there's still additional things that you can test for and make sure that your assumptions of your controls are valid. And if the worst case scenario happens, vulnerability gets weaponized, there's an exploit. Well, guess what? There's still a lot more that an attacker needs to have success with. And you have detection, you have preventative controls. Are those actually in place to mitigate the blast radius or impact of that?
Right. I think we haven't talked at all at the regulation of it all, the regulatory issues of it all. So like,
I wouldn't wait on that. I agree with you, but
no, I'm not saying that. But what I am saying, what I was going to say is like, there have been like no concrete, this is regulation as
like
far
action
as
guidance
goes now from like the FDIC or any of the trickle down regulators. Right. So like, for instance, when I was doing research for the presentation I gave yesterday, I was like, what is being said, right? Like what is known about what is being said about like getting quote unquote AI ready for defensive purposes. And I couldn't find much, right? I even asked Claude, hey, what do you got? And it couldn't find much, doing web searches and whatever. But like the one interesting thing is how, I think it was in April, like late April, maybe, the Fed chair Jerome Powell was like brought in, Citibank, Bank of America, all the head muckety mucks of these big organizations, and was like, look, this is going to be a huge problem. Here's what we see. You guys need to start thinking about it, right? So it's going to, from that, it's just a matter of how fast. And like examiners, I think, from what I understand, are already starting to like kick the tires around the organizations that they are examining. Oh, what are you thinking about with this? What are you doing with that? Right. When it comes to AI, like, how are you? I think it might have even been in this CSA paper. Like they're going to start asking like, what are you doing internally with AI? Like, what are these applications that you have? How are you handling them? Are they homegrown? What are they doing? Right. Do they have access to certain data that maybe they shouldn't? Right? Like, how are they guardrailed? Right? Like, all those things are going to start being asked. And again, it's the government, so who knows how fast. But it would behoove, people to start thinking about those questions now and how they're going to answer them. And I even think, again, in this paper, actually, the CSA put out a pretty robust Excel doc about risk assessing and risk managing AI in an organization. I don't have it open. But it was a beast of an Excel doc with a lot of different sheets and risk rating different things and questions to ask and yada, yada, yada. So we'll see where it all goes. Interesting time to be alive. I do not envy defenders right now. I'll be honest. It's
probably more fun for us.
Obviously it's more
speed and
more
ideas, innovation. Yeah.
We do our best to try to like get people ready and talk about things like this and conference talks and banking associations and healthcare conferences and all that stuff to talk about stuff like this. But at the end of the day, we're not the ones that have to walk the walk, So, all right, we can cut it there. Thanks for listening. I have a feeling, given our viewer count, that most people will be listening to this after the fact, if at all. So, appreciate the time, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.